was hilarious, man.
Because like, what is it actually trying to say? That like nursery rhyme.
Yeah, Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men. Yeah, couldn't fix the recession. Countryman.
That Jack and Jill, innit?
Yeah, Jack and Jill went up the hill.
Market sat on the wall. Stock market had a big fall.
Yeah, all of the soldiers and all of the government politicians kept sticking the dirty hands and stealing all the money. Dirty.
Like, so really, they've only paid like 20,000 for it. But there's a massive £80,000 in the mortgage.
Yeah. Well, it's fictional money, isn't it? It's legal fiction. They create it. They create an imaginary debt. The house actually exists. There's not a debt to anything. There's not a natural debt to anything. You know, the human need to live. You know, we have, I suppose, 3 basic needs, which is food, clothes, and shelter. Yeah. We need that. And it's guaranteed by every law in the world.
That doesn't exist naturally.
No.
No such thing as
that.
We've invented it in order to make money, basically.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, anything that doesn't happen or work in the real world, which is natural, right, it isn't ever going to work when you're applying it to reality.
No.
So that's why we're in a recession. It's like, because we're running out of resources in proportion to money. There's too much money and too little resource. So if everyone's got all this money that's supposed to have its worth in resource that we don't have enough of, everyone's trying to claim their stuff back, but there isn't enough.
No.
So it doesn't work. So I don't think there's any way to solve that without like heavy reform that isn't going to happen because people are making too much money at the top. Yeah. So it's going to come down.
Well, like you said, they've gambled with things that don't exist, derivatives.
But the only way it can go is for it to collapse. It don't make any sense for it not to.
It's a mathematical certainty that there's no such thing as infinite growth. Their models of business is based on infinite growth. Which is every year they have to grow. They have to grow, or they'll go out of business.
Infinite growth is the big one.
And the reason they have to have growth at all is because the banks give money at usury. That is, they'll give you the money, being the only licensed exclusive person allowed by the government, which is an exclusive deal between themselves to produce that money. Right. Therefore, limiting your access.
And what I'm saying isn't even a prediction; it's certain. It's already happening. That's why we're already in a recession.
Yeah,
it's coming down now, and it will be soon when it comes right down.
So
the prices of like resource will go up so high that no one can afford them.
It'll double overnight.
It'll go up, and then nobody will be able to buy it up.
Yep.
And then it'll all come down because
the average price of say a block of cheese is about £5 now. £5 for cheese, and it used to be, we know, about £2, £2.50.
It's not even like you won't be able to fill up your car. It'll be like companies won't be able to get the resources to build stuff.
No, they won't even be able to afford to employ their staff.
Roads won't get maintained. Houses won't get maintained. Companies will sack people because they can't.
Yeah, and everything will go into free fall. And at every time in history when that's occurred, the people have been provoked into war, looking for extra resources. Because without those extra resources to prop up the system, everything about the system has been a prop up. World War I was a prop up. World War II was a prop up.
That Russia's going in for the Ukraine.
Yeah, well, Russia's clearly, got mixed messages going on there, isn't it? We're peacekeepers. Hello, welcome to my little friend. See my gun?
Their stock market collapsed because of the Ukraine being under civil war, essentially. So they're trying to protect their stock. That's all. It's nothing to do with like their citizens and going into protect.
No, it's about slavery, really.
They're not even their citizens. They're ethnically Russian, but they're Ukrainian citizens. So it doesn't make sense. They just
people are allowed to decide for themselves how they want to live.
Like English ethnics all over the planet. So like if a country goes into civil war, do we then just step in because some of them are ethnically English? It don't make any fucking sense. It's for the stock. They're protecting their stock, and that's it.
I mean, technically speaking, because these countries that are members of the EU and EU law is being recognised, we're supposed to have a say on that. Everybody gets a vote nobody exercises the right to vote for the representative in Europe. But it tells you clearly that people in Europe have the right to vote for our Prime Minister and elected officials in our country. And we also, by the virtue of equality, have the same right to vote for who's their Prime Minister. So the Prime Minister of France, we get a say in that.
Which still hasn't.
But who's exercising that right? They just go, it's none of my business. But what? By being ignorant of world politics and how that affects us all globally, there's no denying that, what happens in one country will affect everybody else.
What's been happening and what has happened in the Ukraine is a really big deal. It's a really big deal. But
of course it is, but it's played down.
When we turned on the news before, after we heard that they were given 3 hours to surrender, the news weren't covering it. The BBC weren't covering it.
Well, the BBC are pathetic these days.
The US was covering it. Al Jazeera was covering it.
Yeah.
But our government wasn't covering it.
Our government is very, very scared that the same thing is going to happen to them. And the BBC have obviously taken sides and decided to have a political agenda. And it's quite obvious to see because they don't report on many of the important issues. They just completely obscure it. And they're guilty now, right, it's like wartime propaganda. They're like Pathé News, man. They're just propagandizing everything. Troops are so wonderful. Blah, 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 blah.
It might sound a bit extreme, but I'm mentally preparing myself for just survival. I mean, no one's looking out for me. The government ain't looking out for me. No. Well, I'm looking out for you, man. Friends obviously are, and family. But I mean, real stability.
So self-sufficiency is a human desire. When you get to a certain age and you grow up, you don't want to live at your parents' house, really. You want to go off and live by yourself.
And why do we have an aversion to that? Why do we have an aversion to being dependent? It's because
we develop character
and survival. I think
we develop character that way, though.
The only way to be sure of your own survival is to take it into your own hands.
Yeah.
That
is, as some would say, the primitive reptilian brain, the survival mechanism. Well, maybe it's bullshit or not, but to use the analogy that we've got, say, 3 parts to our brain, and nobody can really, absolutely prove anything. Everything is always speculation.
Part of your body that's looking out for survival. Your whole body is built for it. That's what we're built for. That's it.
It's part of our body. It's an important part of our body.
Your body is there for that.
But when we can reason about it, we've used a higher part other than just the what they call it, a baser instinct, and maybe that demigrates it to something lesser important. I'm not saying that it has lesser importance, but in terms of its position in the brain, it's towards the base of the brain. So it would stand to reason that develops first.
Yeah. The thing is, that's just for
and higher reasoning, our memories and things like that develop after we're born. That being these higher deductive things and memories
for survival purposes.
Yes.
I mean, you have memory for a reason.
Yeah.
There's no part of your body that isn't there for some other reason other than survival. It's why don't you have 3 arms? You don't need it for survival, so you don't have it.
And the better all of that performs, it's like a computer. The healthier you are, the better your memory. The more hard drive you have, the
better
more
your chances of survival.
Yeah.
It all comes down to that. That's what we're here for. Nothing more. I mean,
well, they're trying to use administration to surpass us, aren't they? And use it to, ethnically cleanse. I mean, sanctions are unlawful.
Yeah, of course.
Just clearly unlawful. They're trying to legalise it. That doesn't make it lawful. So that means that you've just written a law that contradicts with another law for a conflict of interest.
If we agree that every part of your body and your entire being is there for survival purposes, basically, then what is your most fundamental right? Survival.
To live.
That's what you've been given by nature.
You're going to want to try and breathe. You're going to want to try and find something to eat.
In direct contradiction to that one basic right.
Yeah. Well, what does it say about what we're entitled to live? What's the minimum amount of money we're entitled to by law to live? And that cannot be contradicted because the word minimum is very specific.
Yeah.
Very specific. It's the minimum. End of story. End of story. So if I'm entitled to that by law to live, and then someone says, no, you're not having it, who's broken the law, me or them? They have. Okay, I'm entitled to relief and remedy from hardship at all times. Otherwise, there's no point a government existing. They have no purpose for being, right? And that's why I'm saying they're all imposters, really. They're imposters. I'll bet you that none of them are insured. They're all backing out. They're all pulling all their interests out of the country and sending it abroad to their little safe havens. Because when they've finished setting all this up, they're going to abandon the people. That's the plan of cowards. That's what they'll do. They aren't prepared to even face up to questions. You get me?
What is it? What's your facts?
Hey, I've got nothing to do. I'm just counting my days down to, you know, they sanction me to death. Yeah, I'm not allowed to eat. Not allowed to eat. The law says I'm not allowed to eat. They're saying the law says I'm not allowed to eat. That's their interpretation of what the law's saying. I'm saying the law doesn't say that. They're saying, well, we don't want you to be able to fight back. So we're going to take away your ability to write. We're going to take away your ability to natural life activities, you know, such as socialising and feeding yourself and
What do you say to that?
having a poo and
You're I have to get fucked for that.
oh yeah, I got some lashes for that. It was like 12 years a slave. Oh, they had to see the white meat, you know. They said, beat me to the white meat showing. For that, hey, I tell you. No, I was Kunta Kinte for a while. Yeah, that's where we're back at. We're back at roots, man. The roots, and the root of their evil, right, is a failure to recognise moral and ethical duties. They've substituted the word duty, meaning morals and ethics. And when they say duty, they mean, I have a duty to make revenue. I have a tax. I have a money I'm requiring. That's what they mean by their word duty. Because they're only paid to do these things. They don't even have a heartfelt concern. They have no belief. And certainly their belief is not allowed to come into their job, is it? Because that would be prejudice. That would colour the laws that they're applying because their own beliefs may be contrary to the law. You know? And to be honest, it's a sign of mental illness that they cannot see the connection between the actions they're taking. Like that guy who had disability, that Atos said he had to go back to work, and he couldn't even attend the interview, he was so disabled. And said, yeah, that's proof that he doesn't require, you know, our assistance.
Well, it's
sanctioned him, and then he died.
It's lack of emotional connection.
He died of starvation.
Which is psychosis.
Yeah, it's pathological
Really,
mental disorder.
Actually psychos.
Psycho, yeah. If you look at the, you know, a psycho doesn't care about anybody else.
No.
You know, they're
also very convincing in their arguments and very manipulative.
Main thing they just lack empathy in it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which
is a social duty, you know, that is the true duty. That's what develops a
like, even
character.
if we don't give in to it all the time, we all have empathy.
Yeah.
Unless you're psychotic.
Yeah.
And then people, they don't even know about it, innit?
Yeah. Well, like that virgin shouting now, you wouldn't even need to ask how he's feeling if you've got empathy. And nobody really cares. That's the sad thing. Now I care. I think, really, he's probably been through what everyone's been through at some stage, and he's arrived at that. You know, that's what their persistent actions against us can cause.
It's a symptom of an illness, and the illness is an administrative one.
Well, they use administration to blackmail people, first of all. They make a threat, do this or else. Like, they've got that power. That power doesn't exist for them in law. It's a made-up power. Just because they wrote it down doesn't make it common law. Because the result of that, they haven't followed things through to its logical conclusion, and we're being experimented on by these new laws. It's an experiment, social experiment. Well, let's see what happens if we take away all the oxygen. Oh look, they've turned blue. Oh look, they're falling and collapse on the floor. Make a note of that.
Well,
no oxygen causes death. That's interesting. Let's try it with no food.
Like the recession's a force of nature, and like
yeah.
it's not a force.
Every so often we have the recession cycle, like the water cycle.
People are like, oh, it's just get through the weather. It's just bad weather this fucking decade. No, it's not.
So it's not been
It's taken.
thought about. It's not been put on a piece of paper and thought about.
It's been acted upon and created. It's not
Yeah.
something that just comes up out of the blue. It's raining today. What? It's insane. But that's what people think.
Yeah.
And the same with like, you know, stuff like that. Someone shouting in the street like, "Oh, isn't that shame?"
Yeah, well, the lunatics are definitely running the asylum. Yeah, that's not just a saying. These things are bearing very much a reference to real life. As I've said, the way they're acting using administration to kill people is reminiscent, if not the same, as the Nazis organising through administration the extermination of however many millions of Jews and other people,
Many others.
Soviets,
Any
you know,
ethnic
Slavic
minority.
people, and all the other people that don't get mentioned, don't get special, you know, mention. They're not important enough.
And gay people.
And gay people,
Just
yeah,
anything.
and anybody who just spoke out, you know, let's just crush
And
them with
writers
tyranny.
and musicians and artists.
Yeah, and everyone would say, well, Hitler was a psychopath. So what does it make their actions? Knowing that we've got the history of Hitler, at least we've got that on video. We can see that. We can actually see that. Everything else is pretty much like kind of hearsay, innit? All those history books, you've got to believe that the written word they're saying is true, and the drawing that they made is true. They didn't actually have the ability to show you actual footage now and say, well, that couldn't necessarily be invented just so, unless it was orchestrated, and maybe it was. Which is why propaganda worked throughout World War II.
But this is precisely why the written word I'm more likely to believe, because it's not like it's the only piece of evidence they have. Let's say there's 100 pieces of writing that say the same thing happened on the same day.
Right.
And that gives you enough to make a judgment that is true.
Well,
if it's just one,
yeah.
like
That's
you
why
said
Jesus
before,
is a
one
historical
witness is
fact.
useless. It's the same thing. It's like anyone could say anything, but once.
Yeah. People
say
have a
it,
problem
more like
accepting that there was this guy called Jesus. But, you know, according to the books and things and the historical facts that we do have, he was a real person. So much so that our entire system has based itself on many of his traditions. We still have a Christmas, don't we? No one's abandoned that tradition. In fact, we spend more on that tradition than any other
I
day
think that's like.
of the year. Think about that. Think about what is the
I'm
meaning
not
and
saying Jesus
significance.
didn't exist, but that doesn't give it more evidence for his existence.
Oh no,
because
no, I'm not saying it does.
religion was a superpower and still is. So that's why it's still part of
I
our
like
culture,
that.
because it's such a big thing. It doesn't make it more true.
No,
It's just
no.
it's influence and power.
But what gives me
But-
substance to my belief is the fact that many of the things that are spoken of, you know, the parables, bear relevance and are eternally true
Yeah.
and can be figured out. You know, the parable of the 5 loaves and 7 fishes, you know.
Yeah, like
Everybody's looking at, oh, he created a great miracle, he turned them fish into enough fish, say 1,000 pieces of fish, that he could feed the 1,000 people. I don't believe it was anything like that. I think his level of thinking is the level that he was on mentally allowed him to take an approach where he could make fish soup, you know?
see them all as like metaphors. I
Yeah,
don't take it literally.
yeah. But if
Doesn't
you
make it
make
less
fish soup
relevant
and you've got a bunch of angry people and they all want feeding, oh, I want a piece of fish, I want a piece, you know, fish. And he just comes and says, I'm going to make some fish soup and throw everything in together. And then there will be enough to give 1,000 people. But, you know, people don't want to break it down like that. Oh, no, it's got to be a miracle that nobody else could do. Because that's the message of Jesus, really. You can't do what Jesus can do.
So bow down to the
Yeah, you weren't born perfect. You weren't born holy and without a dad. We're going to tell you a lie. Because maybe the truth is too hard for people to handle. That someone who was such a good person actually came from something so humble that it made those people with great riches and power, I think, well, how can he be allowed to speak and do such great things? And we've got all this money and we don't look as good as that. Because it's always based on the human ego. You know? The only justifiable reason, right, is that they was all psychopaths when they wanted to murder Jesus. If you ask the people today, would you be one of them people who'd want to be saying, kill Jesus? Well, you think, probably, most people would say no.
Well, yeah.
But how do they react today in reality, when there's probably 1 million Jesuses by different names, you know, we're all sons and daughters and family, and they're going through exactly the same kind of tortures and torments, but we're sitting back and saying, you know,
Kill
them all and free Barabbas. Yeah? Free the politicians, let them loose amongst society. They know what's best. Did it? Have any of them got engineering degrees? And are they capable of actually building something?
Well,
you know?
what I think, like, because it's what representative democracy is, but I don't think representative democracy can work. I think that's a contradiction.
No.
How could someone else represent 10,000 people's views?
Yeah, when the views must conflict. They must conflict.
Of course.
So you're born with this conflict of interest by being the politician.
I'll represent my own point of view, thanks.
That's what I'm
And
saying.
I don't have the option for that. I have to have someone represent.
Well, you do have the option,
I
but
can't.
they're not following the law.
No, I
Universal
can't.
Declaration. Oh yes, you can. Universal Declaration of
No,
Human
I can't.
Rights, Article 21, I believe. Check it out, because I don't say things, you know, for people to just accept. I want you to try and prove me wrong. You know, tell me if I'm wrong. I'd love that. You know, Article 21 of Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Everyone has the right to take part in their government directly. Or, and or is a key word, because that's telling you there's a choice. Straight away you got a choice. It means something different. And I'm sure most people know what the word or means, but they don't ponder on the significance when it's put in a document like that. Or, vote for your representative, yeah? So you've got a choice. They're not saying you could be in government directly because they don't want you in there. You're going to stop their plans if you're represented directly, because you as a normal person who doesn't have the conflict of interest, because you're not on the board of directors of these corporations or having sons and daughters who are somehow connected to these things. You know, people don't even do a background check on the politicians. Everyone else gets a CCB check and criminal record check to have any job these days, but theirs aren't, and they're not made public, and then it comes out, oh, they've done this and they've done that. Oh, it's a big scandal. No, it's incompetence to begin with in the first place. That should never be allowed. The place that they occupy has become a den of vultures, a den of thieves. And if you're not a thief, you cannot survive there. And the only way it can be solved is having normal, everyday people in that. If a government is required, let's say, you know, people really are in need, because you're going to have disabled people, and there I think is the problem. We're going to need to have people who care about others, and we're going to need to have the resources to make sure that everybody can be taken care of and take care of others. You know, our ability to create a heaven on this earth simply is feeding others with that 6 foot long spoon. Because we're in hell right now, holding onto a 6 foot long spoon, trying to individually feed ourselves, and that can't work. Not in the long term.
Just eat with my hands.
Yeah, well, if you're in heaven or hell, those rules are just set. It's an example, you know. You cannot change what is by that thinking. You must change your thinking. You know? If the only way you could feed yourself is to hold the 6 foot long spoon at the end and not be, oh, I'm going to hold it at the end. No, you're not allowed. Satan will just take your arms away then. And then what? You know? When you're in a position like that, where you're powerless to change circumstances.
Natural law.
Natural law.
You ain't changing that.
Right, you ain't changing that. And when they claim that they are enforcing something so that you can't now effect a change, which is against natural law, you know, and it's going to cause death of people, and be willingly ignorant of that, there is no excuse. There is no excuse that can be given. That's why when I went in the job centre and asked them, excuse me, do I have a human right? And the man was shaking. It's like I said the word that loosed the demons in his head, and the demons started panicking. And his result was his fear of what is going to now happen if I say yes or no to this question. How can you not answer a question as basic as, do I have a human right or not?
And what did he say to that?
Just, I want you to leave now, please.
Yeah.
What?
Stonewall.
What? That is psychopathic behaviour. That is not sympathetic. That is lacking in empathy. It's an admission of guilt, clearly, you know. A non-response like that. Anybody with any common sense is going to know that is a guilty reaction.
It's
Yeah.
like, did you nick that? Just the answer.
You know what I
It's
mean?
like, well, you nicked it then, did you?
Yeah, but you got it in your hand.
Yeah.
The thing is, anyway, they're not allowed to say things like that. They're a public servant, right? They're there in an office of trust. And if I've got a legitimate question, a reasonable question, you know, if you need to ask us about any of your rights, it tells you in the documents. If I'm asking, I do need. And you're saying, leave. Wow. You're gone, mate. Your soul, it left. It left the building. So what is inside of these people? What do they think is going to happen? What is going to be the result when they sanction people? What is the effect of that sanction going to have on a living human being?
It's pretty obvious, isn't it?
Well, no, let's define it. Let's not be broad about it. Let's define what exactly
the effects
the effect of sanctioning the access to food, clothes and shelter does to a human being. Let's be real. Because we need to be that real so that they fully understand what their actions have caused and the liability they hold for murdering people.
Yeah.
There's nothing in their public office that allows them to murder people. There's no law that will protect them. Just because daddy government says, oh, we'll protect you, we'll send in a billion police and we'll send in the army and then we'll send in the UN. And really what's going to happen is they're going to create a situation whereby exactly what's happening in the Ukraine happens here, where they're no longer trusted by the people to even handle the most basic of things, including public order. Okay? And it's up to every one of us to have a moral and ethical duty to maintain order. You know? Because they can't do it. We have to do it for free every day according to them.
Everybody has to do it for free every day.
Yeah, but they don't even do it when they're paid.
You shouldn't be paid for moral duty. That skews it.
Yeah, well, when I went into the job centre to complain about being thrown out of the job centre for asking that question and saying I asked them for the CCTV, which I'm entitled to, because if they, caused an assault to me, you've got a duty to go and investigate that. And she said, oh, it was a lawful eviction. Have you got a licence to practice law?
And
why are you being so biased and partial?
they're not a fucking
Can you leave now, please? The same reaction I got from the guy in the job centre. Because there is a conflict of interest. And I'll tell you what it is. Group 4 Security, their involvement in the job centre and so many other areas, right, are the linchpin. You know, they're the scapegoat company that everyone's going to use. No matter how many mistakes they make, they get the contract. And they already have, started involving themselves in police and law and order. And you wonder, well, how many of our local police are actually Group 4 Security, corporation? Well, they announced in November 2012 that they are now a GMP. Chief Constable is now pleased to announce that we are now a corporate soul. Well, that's lovely, isn't it? We're not a public office, we're a corporation. Woo! Demons out.
We're out for money now.
Yeah, money. And that's not a conflict of interest when you're already paid to do your job, but now you seek money for doing your job. And if I ask on the freedom of information for data pertaining to me, you can say, yeah, that's £10, please. I thought it's freedom of information. What are you talking about?
Yeah, it's private now.
Oh, it's private. You're paying for a private. You didn't own that from before. That was created before you even existed.
I'm happy to announce.
That is a criminal act. That is treason. Now they're literally forcing people to die. When you're in a position where you're going to die, and they've declared war, because it's an automatic declaration of war, to provide, not to provide access and remedy to food, clothes and shelter is a crime. And it doesn't matter what all them people that are saying, oh, but I work, you're just lazy bum. I am actually currently on New Enterprise Allowance. And while you're on that, you don't have to go through all this regime where they say, oh, you've got to sign over here all the time and show us all the jobs you've been looking for. Because that is now my work. I am now attempting to be self-employed. And I've done all of that. I've attended all the meetings. Because I want to do that. The Prime Minister himself has even supported and sponsors what I'm doing. Because he's saying it's time for the entrepreneurs. It's time for people themselves, people like you and me, to start up businesses and invest in this country. But I'm being persecuted for doing such a thing because I dared to ask them, why they're taking money out of what I'm entitled to live. If the minimum amount I'm entitled to live is, let's say, £70, then that's the minimum. End of story. So you're not entitled to take anything out. No, not by any law. And plus, even when I've just asked you, like, can you reduce that? Because you're taking too much, you're taking half my benefit.
Yeah.
You can't do it by talking to us, you have to write. I'm talking to you now, but you're so incompetent, there's no point having a phone.
And apparently, you need more to live than I do.
Yeah, that because their wages.
20 quid a week.
And I have to pay those wages as council tax contributions. And anybody who's never been on the dole doesn't know that you pay council tax contributions. Otherwise, you would be liable for that council tax. But you see, because of the Local Government Act 1888, Section 79, subsection 2, the local council is liable for all the duties and liabilities that anybody has in the council. That's why we created government. We're not here to serve the corporations. The corporations and the charters of incorporation were set up so that the corporations look after us. They will help with resource management, and that's a word you hear more and more, but it's what they really mean today is resource mismanagement for profitability. As soon as profitability came into the model, that's what messed it all up. That is the love of money.
Yeah. It's called profit motive, and it's
And the
disruptive.
Bible calls it usury. And says it's evil.
Mm.
And it is. It is evil because it leads to sanctions and benefit. How can the government not have enough money to look after people and give them basic food, clothes and shelter, yet Tesco can throw away 30,000 tonnes in less than 6 months? 30,000 tonnes of food would feed how many people? For a year at least.
Don't know the numbers, man.
Massive amount. Massive amount. Anybody who knows should really try to answer that, right? I like it when people get technical.
I know. I mean, like, when I was skipping, I was eating better than I ever have. You know, when I had no money and I was just skipping food from, like, it was the co-op I was skipping from, tiny little co-op.
Right.
So much food. It was ridiculous.
Oh, you mean, by skipping, you mean going in skips and finding, not going down the road with a skipping rope.
No.
Just clarify that.
Skipping, yeah. Like, just going around the back and just getting the food that they've dumped.
Yeah.
All packaged up, obviously, because everything fucking hits. So it's all absolutely fine. It's just this specific date has passed.
Yeah.
But the food's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I've got senses, I can tell when something's off, and I don't eat it.
Yeah.
You know, it's obvious.
You can smell it, you can see it.
You know when something's off.
Yeah,
if I give you some bread and say, the date's it's in date, but it's full of mold, you're going to be like, I'm not fucking eating
blue.
it. You're not going to eat it just because it's in date.
Yeah.
You know,
Smurf bread, they call that.
And just loads of food, absolutely fine, nice food, sat there. And apparently that's illegal to take that.
Oh, well, yeah, now, because they sell the rubbish, don't they? You're not allowed those 30,000 tonnes. That hard work that the farmer's done, and everybody's done, and the time it took to grow, and the energy and the resources it took to grow, and the petrol it took to drive there and get there, it just goes to the pigs. Pigs get the good food, you know? And as well as the pigs getting the good food, the pigs get pumped full of vaccines and all sorts of crap that you don't know, and then people eat it. And the thing about pigs is that they absorb food and things that they've ingested within a very short time. They literally put the meat on their body within a few hours. That's how quickly they process things. So, you know.
And they eat fucking anything.
Anything. They eat their own crap.
They eat everything.
Yeah.
It's everything that's got anything in it.
Yeah. And, you know, nobody really knows the effect of all the accumulated poisons. It's like the first Batman that Tim Burton did, where the Joker put chemicals in lots of different products, and when you combine those products, you ended up with a brand new effect that would kill you. Well, we've got products with different effects, and maybe it's fine if you eat that product alone, but if you eat those cornflakes with that milk, you're going to get a certain reaction.
Exactly. It's just keeping it to a manageable level. You're never going to get rid of it completely. Like, even if you're living naturally and you're just hunting and gathering, you're taking in stuff that you wouldn't you're not supposed to ingest. It just happens. It's normal. Your body gets rid of it. It's fine. But when you start adding it to it, that's when it's a problem.
Yeah.
There's no reason for it to be there.
Yeah.
Why add it? Why up the dosage of something you know is not of any use to you?
You know what it is? It's global ignorance. The world is suffering a shortage of intelligence,
Well,
and
it keeps
true
you
wisdom.
lethargic. Your body's busy dealing with all this shit you put in it.
Yeah, yeah.
So you feel like crap and you don't do.
Yeah,
this,
I suppose it has the
blame
same
someone
effect as not being able to think straight because you're intoxicated with something else.
You've been drugged, basically, so that you can be robbed easier, basically.
Yeah. More pliant and compliant, you know.
If I knock you out before I take all your stuff, you can't stop me.
Yeah. Well, have you seen all these cop shows and all these bailiff shows that they're bringing out? And it's a direct way of them saying, well, we control the media, we're going to put out lots of propaganda because we're losing, basically. Every argument that they're presenting, they're losing. You know, the public knows this. But they're still trying to brainwash the masses because there's plenty of people that still believe in Uncle Tom. You know? They're just house slaves. They're just helping to keep slavery going.
I'm going to get on doing some reading, man.
Yeah, man. Get the garden sorted. Nice talking to you, though.
Yeah, it's been good.
Alright.